Trump's tariff scam implodes. World freezes deals as chaos backfires. Donald Trump is having the kind of Sunday that exposes what MAGA governance really is when you strip away the slogans. A fever dream blend of legal overreach, international humiliation, and economic policy written like a late-night rant on social media. After the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Trump's sweeping emergency tariffs, the White House didn't respond like a serious administration that respects the rule of law. It responded like a cornered grifter caught running the same con, with a new fake mustache switching legal hooks, declaring continuity, and daring the public to stop them from taxing Americans through the back door. Because that's what this has always been, a tax. A tariff is not a magic wand that makes other countries pay. It's a levy collected at the border that flows through importers, supply chains, and ultimately into prices and profits. It's why the Trump team panics the moment courts start asking a basic question. What is the lawful basis for this sweeping global punishment spree? And it's why the Supreme Court's decision mattered so much. According to SCOTUS blog's coverage, the court rejected Trump's attempt to read the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, as a blank check for tariffs, cutting off the legal fantasy that he can just declare emergency and shake down the economy at will. But MAGA doesn't do lesson learned. MAGA does workaround. And almost instantly, Trump's team pivoted to a new authority, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, announcing a new round of tariffs framed as a temporary import duty to address international payments problems. The White House even put out a fact sheet trying to dress it up in patriotic language about rebalancing trade. Yet the entire point of this pivot was not good policy, it was a legal escape hatch. A way to keep the tariff machine running while they scramble for longer-term mechanisms like Section 301 investigations and other tariff tools that take time. Fortune's reporting captured the essence of the move. Section 122 as a plan B to buy time and preserve the policy, even after the court slammed the door on IEEPA. So what did the world do? It reacted like grown-ups dealing with an unreliable partner who keeps changing the rules mid-handshake. In Brussels, the European Parliament's trade leadership signaled a freeze or delay in moving forward with ratifying the EU-US trade deal, explicitly citing tariff chaos. Reuters reported that Bernd Lange, chair of the Parliament's Trade Committee, urged delaying the vote in response to the whiplash after the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs, and Trump raced to slap on a new temporary tariff, later bumped to 15%. Euractiv similarly reported that lawmakers were moving to suspend ratification work amid the turmoil. And that detail alone tells you everything. Trump doesn't make deals. He makes messes. A trade agreement isn't a reality TV prop you wave around for applause. It requires stability, predictability, and credibility, three things Trump treats as personal enemies. The EU's reaction wasn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It was about trust, and Trump has none. Partners can't ratify agreements when the U.S. position is whatever Trump felt like posting last night, and when the legal basis for the policy is so flimsy that the Supreme Court is actively ripping it apart. Then you have India. Again, not some vague, maybe they're upset. Multiple outlets noted that India postponed trade talks in Washington in the wake of the renewed tariff uncertainty. Fortune reported that New Delhi officials cited similar reasons for delaying discussions this week on finalizing an interim trade deal. The message is unmistakable. If America is being run like a chaos lab, serious countries aren't going to waste time playing along. This is where Trump's defenders try to distract you with their favorite trick. They turn every crisis into a branding exercise. They roll out a surrogate, some polished official sent to Sunday shows, who insists the policy hasn't changed, only the legal tool changed. That line isn't reassurance, it's confession. It's admitting the White House just got smacked by the Supreme Court for unlawful behavior, and their response is to keep doing the same thing and hunt for a different statute to hide behind. That's not leadership. That's rule of law vandalism dressed up as continuity. And while Trump is lighting the global economy on fire with tariff roulette, the financial consequences are looming in a way MAGA can't spin away. Reuters reported that the Supreme Court tariff ruling could place a massive pile of U.S. tariff revenue at risk of refunds. Penn Wharton estimated that over $175 billion in revenue could be subject to refund exposure. Read that again slowly. This is the part where Trump's scheme doesn't just hurt consumers on the way in, it also threatens a refund and litigation mess on the way out. That's what happens when you build policy on legal quicksand. You don't get strength, you get a boomerang. Now layer on the diplomatic dysfunction because Trump's chaos isn't limited to trade. In France, the government announced it would summon U.S. Ushner over U.S. Remarks tied to a politically charged death in what French officials condemned as opportunistic commentary on French domestic affairs. Reuters reported France's decision to summon Kushner, with Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot pushing back against U.S. statements, and also raising other sovereignty-related disputes, like sanctions on EU figures. The Guardian reported the same looming diplomatic confrontation and the broader political strain around it. Let's pause here, because this is one of those moments where the absurdity is so thick you can barely breathe. Trump's America is simultaneously begging other countries to honor trade deals while yanking tariffs up and down like a slot machine, and also provoking allies by inserting itself into domestic political conflicts abroad, then acting shocked when foreign governments say, in effect, "Who do you think you are?" This is what it looks like when a movement that worships bullying tries to run a superpower. It confuses intimidation for strategy, and it confuses noise for strength. And then there's Greenland, the perfect symbol of Trump's predatory, colonial mindset. The transcript you shared captures the grotesque pattern. Trump posts bizarre messaging about sending hospital ships to Greenland as if the U.S. is swooping in to save people who didn't ask for saving, in a territory he's repeatedly treated like a commodity. Whether the specific ships are available or not, the political signal is the same. Trump keeps testing boundaries around sovereignty, floating help as a pretext for influence, and feeding paranoia because he cannot grasp the concept of respectful partnership. When you talk about other people's land the way Trump does, like it's a prize, don't be surprised when they read your aid as a Trojan horse. This is the through line. Trump treats law, diplomacy, and economics the same way he treated his businesses, like contracts are optional, like regulators are enemies, like consequences are for suckers, and like the entire point is to extract value before anyone can stop you. In that worldview, if the Supreme Court says, no, you don't adjust your behavior, you shop for another loophole. If allies ask for stability, you call them weak. If markets want predictability, you tell them to deal with it. It's not policy. It's a personality disorder scaled up into governance. And because Trumpism is always performative, the chaos comes with a side of humiliating self-parody. The transcript highlights a clip making the rounds featuring a caller identifying himself as John Barron on C-SPAN, an alias Trump has famously used in the past when pretending to be his own spokesperson. Even if you set Acid Caller's identity, the symbolism is almost too on the nose. A political movement built on deception, still reaching for old tricks, still trying to launder propaganda through a fake name, still stuck in the same cheap con man habits while the country pays the bill. The legal system is dealing with Supreme Court-level disputes over tariffs, and Trump world is still playing telephone with aliases like it's 1989. Meanwhile, the administration's public messaging about refunds and legal responsibility is the usual MAGA dance. Deny, evade, blame the lower courts, and pretend the question itself is unfair. In the transcript, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is pressed on whether the government will refund tariff revenue if the tariffs are held unlawful, and he tries to reframe and dodge, emphasizing that the Supreme Court didn't address refunds and pushing responsibility down the road. The problem is that reality doesn't care about spin. If the legal basis collapses, the refund fight will come, and Reuters reporting underscores just how large the numbers could be. Here's what should make every American furious. Trump's tariff chaos isn't some abstract chess match. It's whiplash imposed on businesses, workers, and families, exported to allies who rely on predictable rules. A temporary 10% becomes 15%. A Supreme Court loss becomes a new proclamation. A trade deal becomes a hostage note. And through it all, Trump's political machine tries to sell this as strength because it knows the truth would be politically fatal. This is incompetence weaponized, and the world sees it. Reuters reporting on the EU trade deal delay captures the core reality. Partners are looking at the volatility and saying, we can't ratify something when the U.S. is lurching from one tariff scheme to the next. This isn't America first. This is America isolated because no serious partner wants to build long-term economic policy around a leader who treats legal limits as personal insults. The most revealing part is that Trump's team all but admits the strategy. Keep the tariffs alive through whatever legal channel they can, run out the clock, and then authorities once the paperwork catches up. Fortune described the administration's intent to use Section 122 to buy time before Section 301 investigations can be completed, with additional tariffs potentially flowing from other authorities, like Section 232. In other words, this isn't a temporary fix. It's a conveyor belt. The goal is perpetual tariff threat as leverage, because Trump doesn't know how to negotiate without holding the global economy hostage. And if you're wondering why Trump keeps reaching for tariffs even after courts push back, the answer is ugly and simple. Tariffs are a power trip. They let Trump posture as a strongman, punish perceived enemies, and generate a storyline about fighting for America even when the fight is imaginary and the casualties are American consumers. It's the same political logic that powers every MAGA spectacle. Create a crisis, take a dramatic action that sounds tough, blame others for the fallout, and demand applause for the mess you made. This is also why the Supreme Court ruling matters beyond trade. SCOTUS blog's coverage framed the decision as rejecting the idea that IEEPA grants unilateral tariff power based on a thin reading of the statute. That's not just a technical legal fight. It's a boundary line. It's the judiciary saying, you can't just declare emergency and legislate by proclamation forever. The White House fact sheet, pivoting to Section 122, shows how quickly Trump tries to step around that line. The rule of law question isn't theoretical anymore. It's live. It's urgent. It's happening in real time. And as the world delays, freezes, and summons, Trump's defenders will keep insisting that this is all part of some master plan. But master plans don't require constant legal improvisation. Master plans don't collapse at the Supreme Court and then reappear as a new temporary tax on imports. Master plans don't produce diplomatic spats with allies and sudden postponements of trade talks. What you're watching is a reactive machine, not a strategic one. A presidency that does not govern. It flails. The truth is, Trump's catastrophic Sunday isn't a one-day story. It's the Trump story. The through line is always the same. Break norms, overreach legally, provoke backlash, claim victimhood, blame Democrats, and double down. The difference now is that the consequences are stacking up internationally, legally, and economically at the same time. The Supreme Court said no. The EU is signaling a freeze. India is postponing talks. France is summoning his ambassador. And the refund question is hovering like a storm cloud over hundreds of billions. This is the cost of MAGA, instability as ideology. It's a movement that cannot operate inside democratic constraints because its entire identity is built on the fantasy that one man's impulses should outrank law, markets, and allies. And when that fantasy crashes into reality, as it did with the Supreme Court ruling, Trump doesn't adapt. He attacks reality. He tries to bend it. He tries to cheat it. He tries to outmaneuver it with loopholes and propaganda. But the world isn't a casino Trump can stiff. The courts aren't his brand managers. And the American people aren't obligated to keep paying for his chaos. If you want to know what comes next, don't look for a coherent plan. Look for escalation. Look for more tariffs dressed up in different legal clothing. Look for more bluster at allies. Look for more Sunday show surrogates telling you the policy hasn't changed, only the law did. Look for more attempts to normalize the idea that the president can keep taxing you by proclamation while shrugging at judges. And look for Democrats and pro-democracy Americans of every stripe to keep doing the one thing MAGA fears most, insisting that law applies, that institutions matter, and that America should not be run like a tantrum. Because this isn't just about tariffs. It's about whether the United States is still a country where rules constrain power, or whether we're going to let Trump turn the government into a private weapon, swinging wildly, breaking alliances, breaking markets, and breaking the law until someone finally stops him at the ballot box and in the courts.